What's up, my friends? It is Danny Gallows, of course, and welcome back to the last part of my Navy experience, where I'm going to be talking to you guys about basically my life post-Navy, but most importantly, my transition back into civilian life, that process of getting out, and what it's like to go back into a regular life. Because, a lot of people don't understand that. They think that, just being, in the military for a long time, they hear people talk sometimes about how it's like a regular job with more restrictions and stuff like that. So how can it be that hard to kind of just transition and go back to regular life? Isn't it super easy? Don't you just want to get out of the military and go back to civilian life? Isn't it kind of like a small celebration in many ways? And the answer to that is yes and no. At the same time, a lot of people, because, I'm sure as you guys have heard me tell stories over this past experience, you guys gotta understand, all these experiences that I've had on the ship and on land in these different countries and with my friends, and, there's experiences that I know that I forgot, that I'll remember later, and I'll regale you guys with more experiences, right? But what you guys gotta understand is that this is all happening over the course of 4 years. It's basically like being at high school, again, in a lot more ways than one. It's just a 4-year stretch of you being together basically with your friends, and you work and do stuff together. And then when that 4 years is over, you have the option to stay in to re-enlist, or you have the option to go. And I was just, at that point in my career, I was ready to go. To be honest with you guys, I wasn't, I'd contemplated sometimes, should I stay in for 20 years? Because if I stay in for 20 years, then I can retire, and I'll have a lot of money, and, I can do all, but I was just so done with the Navy at that point, because, out in my regular civilian life, me and my friends were having a lot of fun. My entire band at that point, my bassist, Matt, my buddy Matt, and my drummer, Slopes, right? And my guitarist, Brian Patterson, Cake, who I haven't talked to you guys about yet, because, I think I have mentioned him before, but I haven't talked about my band yet in San Diego. He was my guitarist for my hardcore band. I haven't talked about that much. But even all 3 of them were out of the Navy, and we were all set up, it's like we all had cars, and we were paying rent, and, we had apartments, and we were set up. We were good. So it's like, I looked around me, and I saw, my friends transitioning out of the Navy because they wanted to go back into civilian life. We all did. We were like, look, we don't want to be a part of it. It was good and everything was fine, doing the whole, fighting for your country, signing up for 4 years, giving your life away, go fight in the war, go do, a Middle East tour, work your ass off. I mean, the hardest I've ever worked in my life. But at the end of the 4 years, okay, now it's time to transition. Now it's time to go back to civilian life. It's like, I've done that. That process is over. That chapter in my life is over. Now it's time to transition back into civilian life. And it's time to just go back to just having a regular, normal life without any restrictions. It's good in a lot of ways, but it's bad here, and you'll see, as I explain, why you'll see. But the actual process of getting out of the Navy is actually a lot quicker than some might think. I mean, basically, when your time is up, like when it's time for you to go, you just get all your signatures from all of your department heads, and from even odd places like the library and medical department, because you got to check out of places. You got to go down to the dentist and go down to the doctor and check out to make sure that, you don't need a checkup or anything done. And so basically you're just checking out of departments. You'll have like a little sheet of paper with you, and you'll go around and you'll have people sign saying, okay, this person has left, this person is no longer a part of this division. And then they kind of process that, and then they'll give you a day, like an actual end date, about when you're going to get out. And it's a very odd feeling, because that, all of a sudden you're not going to be on the ship anymore. You're going home, obviously, after this. Maybe. Sometimes I decided that I wanted to stay out in California for a little bit, but at the same time, it's like, you're kind of leaving that life. You don't know. There's still that possibility of you going back home and the possibility of you never seeing a lot of those people again. And that was the case, because what happened is after I transitioned out of the Navy, and to continue my transition story, basically, it's just, after I got my paperwork signed, they give you an end date. You wake up on that day, and a very, very, like I said, very strange feeling, to be leaving everything behind. You gather up all your belongings. Your locker is empty, your rack is empty, all the bed sheets are stripped down and waiting for the next person to get in, and you're saying your goodbyes to It's just like high school, like you're saying goodbyes to all your chiefs and your petty officers, and then all your regular friends, and then there's that very eerie feeling, like it's like that. Like I was talking about just a minute ago, that eerie feeling of uncertainty. Like, am I going to see these people again? Like, am I ever going to, this person over here, her, am I ever going to see her again? Am I ever going to see him again? Ever. And it's a very, very strange feeling. But and then I remember distinctly, the very last place I went was basically to check out in the like the admin department, basically where all like the yeomans were, the paper pushers of the aircraft carrier, And you go down there and you check out, and basically that's like the finalizer. It's like the guy's sitting there. Okay, now you understand that this is this and this pertains to this, and you can't do this, and when you get out, you have to contact us about this and make sure that you do that. It's like the final thing. And then bam, they hand you your personal folder, the personal folder that you can't ever get your hands on until you're out of the military, that has all of your personal paperwork on it, and then they have to have a first-class petty officer actually escort you off the ship. It's almost like being escorted out of a club or something like that. Like now that you're no longer a part of the military, technically you can do anything you want. You can just go crazy or something. I don't know. So they have to have like a first-class petty officer escort you off the ship. But luckily, it was my buddy, one of my best buddies in the world. Still to this day, Petty Officer 1 Roland Hugeridge. We called him Huey, and he was one of my best buddies. We just discussed music all the time, played music together, and stuff like that. Just we were just he was so cool. He was our boss, right? But he was just the coolest boss that you could ever ask for. He's one of those perfect bosses, one of those perfect friends, perfect bosses. Never hard, never hard at all. It was such a rarity to have a boss in the military that was never hard with you. He was just completely easygoing and just wanted to have a good time. He wanted to hang out with us. I remember, the coolest people on my ship, would always be at, the parties that were going on in our house, and he would always be there as well, and it's just like, because there were a lot of cool chiefs and petty officers and stuff like that would come out and hang out with us, just in civilian life on a regular basis, because they were just cool people like that. So yeah, he was the one who escorted me off the ship, and he gave me a ride home, and I vividly remember driving off base for the last time. It was very, very strange to be walking away from the ship, because we had to walk far distances sometimes to the parking lot, especially when we went out to sea. Everybody parks, all the ship's personnel park in these big parking lots, and so we were walking the long walk back to the parking lot, and I kept looking behind me at the ship and just the aircraft carrier, and just getting smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller into the distance until it was completely gone, and we were getting in our cars, and I drove off base through the gates for the very last time. And since then, I've literally never been back through the gates at North Island on Coronado. That was the last time I left in, when was it? 2008. 2008. Yeah, it was the last time I left that gate, and I've never been back in since. And I've always wanted to go back in there. Of course, you have to have, if you're not in the military, you have to have like escorts, to go back into the base. But I've always wanted to go back in there just to walk around. I don't know, just to see things. Maybe get a tour of an aircraft carrier or something like that. I'm sure that I still know people out there, but the problem is getting out there. I need the money to actually get out there again. But I will someday, and it'll be cool to walk around the base again. But yeah, so he gave me a ride home, and I remember that I wanted, I wasn't in the Navy anymore, so I remember that I wanted to get some bud, and I wanted to get some beer and some alcohol and stuff, and so he set me up with all that stuff, and we just had a big kind of like party at the house, because at that point, like I said, all four of us, the entire band was out of the Navy. So we were just, we were civilians again. And everything was perfect. It was just, we were partying and we were having a good time. We were hanging out every day. We had plenty of money in savings, so we were just kind of relaxing and chilling and just having a good time and playing music. Of course, it was me and my bassist Matt and my drummer Slopes, Brian Patterson, my other guitarist Cake, we called him. And we all just hung out, and we just got into this phase where we were just partying, a little too hard at times, I will say, and we just got into this. We were going to a lot of shows, seeing bands, going out every night, basically seeing bands, and just living that life of a garage band that parties really hard, unfortunately though that didn't last, because I think that things just kind of gradually started to kind of fizzle out. I remember that we were playing music all through the Navy. We were really hardcore playing music, literally hardcore, because we were playing hardcore music. But we were like pedal to the metal. We played almost every single day. And then it was strange, as we got out of the Navy, it started to fizzle out. It started to be like, we just got more interested in like playing video games and hanging out and going to shows and stuff like that. Because, it wasn't like, part of being in a band, it was a big release to be in a band. To be in a band kind of justified you being a civilian, even in the military in a lot of ways. It was kind of like a self-justification for all of us that, we're in the military, but we're this awesome band in San Diego as well, so we're military without being military, but we're military at the same time. I don't know. So that kind of started to fizzle out though at the end as we transferred into civilian life. Like I said, we were playing video games and just hanging out and stuff, and we stopped playing music as much. And I remember that I got involved. I got involved with a girl that I shouldn't have gotten involved with. That was a friend of one of my close friends, and it just did not it just. Things were not going well. Things just started to kind of like get weird, and people started to distance themselves from each other, and I made a lot of bad choices definitely at that point in my life, and it was just time for me to go. I just kind of like it wasn't anything bad. It wasn't anything bad to just reassure you guys. It was just there were things that were starting to happen that I could see where they were going, and I was like, no, I don't want to kind of do this stuff anymore. I don't want to be involved with this drama, and there's people don't want to play music anymore, and people just got bad attitudes, and I was starting to hate San Diego a lot. I remember there was even another girl out there that I had a huge crush on for a long time, that we were kind of on and off for a long time, and then things went sour with her at one point. And then there was about like a week or something like that, a week stretch where I just really started to hate San Diego. There was just like a week or two where I was just like, get me out of this desert prison, because that's when I'm being cynical about San Diego. I like to say it's just desert and highways, because it is. San Diego is a beautiful city, but it's a glorified desert. It's just a desert with some foliage and highways everywhere. So I was just like, I'm a Maine kid. It's like where's my beautiful eastern coastline and pine trees and mountains and that kind of environment, lobsters and moose and stuff. You know what I'm saying? That's like I need to go back home. Like I really didn't like, because you guys got to think, I wasn't just in the military for 4 years on an aircraft carrier. I was in San Diego. That's where I had been living for 4.5 years. So at that point I was just like, man, I'm getting sick of this, I want to go back home. The band is fizzling out, people are starting to fizzle out. So I just went back home, and before that, my other guitarist, Cake, had left. He had gone back home to his place, and so it was just kind of time for everybody to leave. Everybody just kind of left to go back home for a while, and that's exactly what I did. And it was when I got back home to Maine where, transferring back into civilian life became very difficult, I found, because when you're in the Navy, you have security. You have a lot of security. Not just literally, obviously because you're in the Navy, but I'm talking about financial security. But when before I left the Navy, I was making like $1,700 a month. I was only working 5 or 6 days a week, 6 days maybe, but most of the time 5 days a week for only like a handful of hours a day when we were in port. And of course I had savings from like hazard pay and stuff like that, war pay, from being overseas and stuff like that. But, I was making like $1,700 a month easy at one point. And when I got back home to Maine, when my savings started to fizzle out, I realized I needed to get a job again. And I started to get these jobs at like, $9 and $10 an hour, and I was only pulling down like $250 a week. I mean, that's pennies. That's pennies compared to what I was making in the Navy. So I found myself, having to get a second job and then searching for a third job. And I heard horror stories about this too before I left. Guys that had got out of the Navy like, a year or two before me, and then all of a sudden they're like crawling back to the Navy saying, man, I shouldn't have got out. Like, I shouldn't have left when I did, because now, in order to pay for my apartment and to upkeep my life, I've got 3 jobs now just trying to pay for my apartment and trying to pay for everything. And I said to myself, oh, that'll never happen to me. I'll have an easy transfer. Beware, guys. When you transfer back into civilian life, it may be comforting for you to get out of the military, but man, was that pay nice to have. I still miss that pay today. I'm still going to jobs trying to find the best pay today. At the age of 30, I'm still trying to find the best jobs with the best pay. The military takes care of its people. You get paid in the military. And it's just, that shock of just being because I was living with my mother again, which isn't, horrible. I was only like 23. I think, yeah, I was 23 at the time, so it's not horrible or anything. But it was like, this was after I was in the military, after I had apartments and houses, you know what I'm saying? Like houses with my friends and stuff like that. Now I was back living with my mother again, and I was like, oh my, this is crazy. It's like I'm looking for a third job. You know what I'm saying? And it was just crazy that shift is so dramatic. And also this is where a lot of people, and I should touch on this obviously before I conclude this video here. This is where a lot of people will continue to develop even PTSD at this point, is your shift into civilian life. When you, Adam Driver, who plays Kylo Ren in The Force Awakens, even touched on this, because I don't know if you guys know, but Adam Driver used to be in the Marines. He was a Marine for a little while. And not only did he talk about the camaraderie and the friendship that he experienced in places like boot camp, as I have on these videos, but he also talked about his very, very odd transition into civilian life. He said, I remember this, distinctly from the magazine. Also, I'm not quoting him. This is not verbatim. This is going to be out of context and everything. But I remember distinctly him saying something like, I get out of the Navy and I see all these people in shopping malls, and I see all these people in, getting pedicures, and I see these people hanging out with their friends, and you find yourself sitting there for a moment kind of saying, okay, now where do I fit into all of this? Because especially for me, I kind of knew where I fit in because I got out of the Navy and we were all together in our house having a good time. But as I said, things suddenly started to fizzle out. And especially when I got back home, I realized, and this was one of my later motivations for going back out to California, I realized that I didn't have any friends when I got back home. I was like, I was there through like 2008, 2009, the rest of 2008 and all of 2009, I should say, and I found myself, being even in jobs. I felt kind of like a shadow man, like in even in jobs and in social life and stuff like that. It's that feeling that Adam Driver was talking about. That kind of, okay, where do I fit in here? Like where do I see all these people doing these things, but I've had this routine for like the longest time, and now I don't have it anymore. Where do I fit in? Like where are my friends? Where do I go? And I found myself being very alone and very kind of depressed and very alienated because all of my friends were still kind of hanging around out in California. I was back in Maine because I'd kind of, been hating California and everything that was going on. And I kind of just found myself in a very, very strange position. And that's, as I said, this is where a lot of people can develop that PTSD. That PTSD develops from the depression that you experience from that dramatic shift back into civilian life. You see, it's almost like the world has gone on without you, and you're trying to find your place. And I still deal with some of that depression today, some of that anxiety. I have very, very bad problems with anxiety still today. Dealing with that subject and stuff. So, be cautious when you're transitioning into civilian life. Don't be afraid to get into some of the outreach programs that the military has for transitioning. There's a lot of ways that the military can set you up with jobs before you even leave, with college before you even leave, which is a lot of things that I did not take advantage of. And looking back on that now, I kind of, it had been nice if I had been a little less hesitant, gung-ho, I should say, about leaving, about just getting off of the ship and leaving and going back into civilian life, because I'm sure there's a lot of opportunities that I left behind. And so make sure that you guys don't leave any of your opportunities behind if you decide to join the military one day, go through your full 4-year experience. Make sure that you get everything out of it that you possibly can, and don't make the same mistakes as I did and think that you can just so quite easily transfer into civilian life, because no matter how easy you think it's going to be, it's always going to be difficult on some levels, either mentally or emotionally, or in some way it's going to impact you. So always be aware of that, guys. And so that's going to do it for this part of that section of my Navy video, the very last section of my Navy videos, transferring into civilian life finally from being in the Navy for 4 years. So guys, it's been an absolute blast having these vlogs with you guys, if you want to call it that, regaling you guys with my experiences from my Navy life, and hopefully this will start to help a lot of people out there who are thinking about joining the military. You guys can watch my full experience. I know I got a playlist set up so you guys can watch the whole thing and experience what it was like for me to be in the Navy, from the ages of 18 to 22, which I was in, a ripe age for basically understanding and molding molding you into the man that I was. That's what it'll do. It'll help you grow up really quick, and that's what I hope these videos will do. It'll help people understand what to expect from my experience and what they can expect to go through, and so that they can make decisions about their own lives. So thank you guys once again for joining me for my Navy experience. Thank you for all of the support and all the likes, all the thumbs up, all the plays. Make sure you share this with your friends and spread the word about good old Danny Gallows doing his vlogs over here, because I'm having a blast telling you guys all of these stories, and I hope that you learned a lot from this specific video series discussing my Navy experience. So I'll see you guys for the next video, and until next we meet, take care. Later.